Blood drips down Jasmine's forehead, staining the white emergency room floor. She stumbles, trying to lean against the wall as nurses walk right past her, averting their eyes with calculated indifference. Her maid's uniform is torn, pain radiating from her broken ribs after falling down the stairs. Nobody moves. Nobody helps. "We don't serve people like her here," one of the nurses whispers to her colleague, loud enough for Jasmine to hear. "Let her wait." That's when the hospital's automatic doors open with deadly silence. The sound of leather shoes against the floor echoes through the corridor. Kim Jae-sung walks in, his immaculate black suit contrasting with the chaos around him. His dark eyes find Jasmine on the floor, and the entire medical staff freezes, the air suddenly too heavy to breathe. If you want to discover how this explosive confrontation began and what happened next, subscribe to the channel and leave us in the comments where you're watching from. Each view helps bring more stories like this. Now let's go back to where it all started, 2 days before. Shanice Williams stood in the cramped kitchen of her one-bedroom apartment in South Los Angeles at 5 in the morning, staring at the eviction notice taped to her refrigerator. The red letters screamed at her like an accusation. Final warning. 3 months overdue. Vacate within 14 days or face legal action. She was 29 years old, but the exhaustion carved into her face made her look closer to 40. Her natural hair was pulled back into a practical bun, her brown eyes carrying a weariness that came from working herself to the bone and still falling short every single month. The bags under her eyes told the story of too many sleepless nights, too many calculations that never added up, no matter how many times she ran the numbers. Behind her at the small kitchen table, Lily hummed softly as she colored in a donated coloring book, her 6-year-old legs swinging beneath the chair. The little girl wore a faded pink dress that Shanice had bought at a thrift store for $3 and carefully mended 3 times. Lily was small for her age, delicate and bird-like, with wide, intelligent eyes that noticed far too much for a child her age. She'd stopped asking why they ate cereal for dinner 4 nights a week, or why Mommy cried in the bathroom with the water running to cover the sound. She'd stopped asking for new toys or pretty clothes. At 6 years old, Lily Williams had already learned what poverty meant. The apartment itself was a testament to Shanice's struggle. 420 square feet, divided into a bedroom barely big enough for a twin mattress where Lily slept, and a living room where Shanice made do with a second-hand couch. The kitchen was a galley with chipped linoleum counters and a refrigerator that hummed too loudly. The bathroom faucet dripped constantly because the landlord refused to fix it. But it was clean. Shanice made sure of that. She scrubbed other people's mansions for a living. She'd be damned if her daughter grew up in filth, even if they were poor. Shanice's phone buzzed on the counter, shattering the early morning quiet. She grabbed it with trembling fingers, her hands rough and calloused from years of scrubbing floors, washing dishes and cleaning bathrooms, in homes that cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. The text was from her cleaning agency supervisor, Maria. New client, Beverly Hills Mansion. $200 extra per day on top of your base rate. 2-week contract minimum. Starts tomorrow 6 a.m. Very particular client. You interested? $200 extra per day. Shanice's breath caught in her throat, her heart hammering against her ribs. She did the math instantly, the way she always did. That was $400 extra per week, $1,600 over 2 weeks. That was enough to cover 1 full month of back rent. Enough to buy Lily the new shoes she desperately needed for school. The ones she wore now had holes in the soles that Shanice had covered with layers of duct tape to keep her daughter's feet dry when it rained. Her fingers flew over the phone keyboard. Yes, send me the address and details. The response came within seconds. 1847 Mulholland Drive. Client is Kim Jae-sung, Korean businessman. Very wealthy, very private. House rules, no photos, no personal questions, no gossiping about what you see. Clean, leave, get paid. He's offering premium rates because he demands perfection. Can you handle it? Shanice typed back immediately. I can handle it. Good. Be there 6 a.m. sharp, don't be late, he fires people for being late. That night, Shanice barely slept. She lay on her lumpy couch, staring at the water-stained ceiling, running through scenarios in her head. What if she messed up? What if this Kim Jae-sung was impossible to please? What if she did something wrong and lost this opportunity? She couldn't afford to fail. She set 3 separate alarms on her phone and laid out her work uniform with military precision. Dark blue scrubs that doubled as maid attire, worn but meticulously clean and pressed. At 4:30 in the morning, she kissed Lily's forehead as her daughter slept, left her with Mrs. Chen next door, who watched her before school for $20 a week that Shanice could barely afford, and headed out into the pre-dawn darkness. She took 2 buses across the city, from South LA to Beverly Hills, watching the landscape transform outside the grimy windows. The buildings got taller, cleaner, more expensive. The cars on the streets went from beat-up sedans to gleaming Mercedes and BMWs. The people waiting at bus stops disappeared entirely. In neighborhoods like this, no one took the bus. The mansion at 1847 Mulholland Drive rose before her like something from a movie, like something that shouldn't exist in the same world as her cramped apartment. Shanice stood at the towering iron gates, her worn Walmart sneakers feeling obscene against the cobblestone driveway visible beyond. The house itself was aggressively modern, all glass and white stone and sharp architectural lines that screamed money and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the pink and gold dawn light. A fountain made of black granite burbled in the circular driveway, water cascading over smooth stone. The manicured lawn stretched like an emerald carpet. The whole place was probably worth $20 million, maybe 30. More than Shanice would earn in 10 lifetimes of scrubbing floors. She pressed the intercom button with a shaking finger. Identification. The voice that crackled through was male, clipped, professional, with a slight accent she couldn't place. Shanice Williams, from Elite Home Services. I'm here to clean. I was told to arrive at 6. The gate buzzed open before she finished her sentence, the iron bar swinging inward with a whisper of expensive machinery. Shanice walked up the driveway, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She'd cleaned rich people's houses before, but nothing like this. This was a different level entirely. The massive front door opened before she could knock, and a woman in her 50s appeared in the doorway. She was Korean. Her grey-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a simple black dress and comfortable orthopedic shoes. Her face was kind but cautious, with deep smile lines around her eyes and mouth that suggested she laughed often, but right now her expression was serious and assessing. "You're early," the woman said in lightly accented English, her dark eyes taking in everything about Shanice in one sweeping glance. "That's good. Punctuality matters here. I'm Mrs. Park. I manage the household. Come inside." The interior of the mansion stole the breath from Shanice's lungs. The foyer alone was larger than her entire apartment, with ceilings that soared 20 feet overhead. White Carrara marble floors gleamed beneath her feet, polished to a mirror shine. A crystal chandelier the size of her kitchen table hung from the vaulted ceiling, thousands of pieces of cut crystal catching the morning light and scattering rainbows across the walls. To her left, a grand staircase curved upward in a sweeping arc, its railing made of polished steel and glass that looked like art rather than architecture. Original paintings hung on the walls, not prints but actual oil paintings, with visible brushstrokes and museum-quality frames. One looked like it might be a Rothko. Another could have been a Basquiat. "The floors are Carrara marble, imported from Tuscany," Mrs. Park said, watching Shanice take it all in with what might have been sympathy. "Mr. Kim is very particular about the cleaning. No harsh chemicals that might damage the stone, no streaks on the glass, no dust anywhere. All the supplies you'll need are in the utility room. I'll show you." As they walked through the house, Shanice tried desperately not to gawk like a tourist. The living room featured leather furniture in shades of cream and grey that probably cost more than a new car, arranged around a fireplace made of polished black granite. The kitchen was a professional chef's dream, all stainless steel appliances, custom Italian cabinetry, and a marble island that could seat 8 people. There were 6 bedrooms, each with its own spa-like bathroom featuring heated floors and rainfall showers. An indoor gym with equipment that looked brand new, a home theater with actual theater seats, a wine cellar with temperature controls and racks holding hundreds of bottles. "Mr. Kim works irregular hours," Mrs. Park explained as they reached the utility room, which was stocked with premium cleaning supplies that cost more than Shanice usually spent on groceries. Sometimes he's here, sometimes he's not. He travels frequently for business. If you see him, be respectful, but don't engage in conversation unless he speaks to you first. He values his privacy very highly. What kind of business is he in? Shanice asked, genuine curiosity overcoming her usual caution. Mrs. Park's expression closed off immediately, like shutters slamming down over windows. Her kind face went carefully blank. Medical technology investments, real estate development, import and export, that's all you need to know. Her voice softened slightly, taking on an almost maternal tone. Listen, I've been with Mr. Kim for 12 years. He's a good employer if you do your job well and mind your own business. He pays well, he pays on time, and he doesn't ask for anything inappropriate. But he's not a man you want to disappoint or cross. Do you understand what I'm telling you? There was something in her tone that made goosebumps rise on Shanice's arms. Not quite fear, but something close to it. Respect mixed with wariness, like you might feel toward a wolf that was currently tame, but could turn dangerous if provoked. Shanice nodded. I understand. The first day passed in a blur of intensive scrubbing and polishing. Shanice worked with the kind of focused intensity that came from desperate need, from knowing that this job meant keeping a roof over Lily's head. She cleaned each room methodically, perfectly, as if her life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. Every surface gleamed by the time she finished. Every window was streak-free. Every floor shone like glass. She saw no one except Mrs. Park, who appeared periodically to check on her progress, inspecting her work with a critical eye that missed nothing. At 4 p.m., Mrs. Park did a final inspection, running her finger along surfaces, checking corners, peering at windows from different angles. Finally, she nodded. Good work. Very thorough. Mr. Kim will be pleased. She handed Shanice an envelope. Inside was $200 in cash. Crisp new bills exactly as promised. Shanice took 2 buses home, bought actual groceries for the first time in a week, fresh vegetables, chicken, milk that wasn't about to expire, and held Lily extra tight that night, breathing in her daughter's scent and feeling, for the first time in months, like maybe things might be okay. The second day started the same way. Shanice arrived at 6 a.m. sharp, her alarm having gone off at 4:30. Mrs. Park let her in with a small smile of approval, gave her the day's assignments, and disappeared into another wing of the massive house. Shanice worked methodically, starting with the bedrooms on the second floor and moving her way down through the house room by room, surface by surface. She was carrying her bucket of cleaning supplies down the grand staircase at 9:30 in the morning when it happened. Her foot hit a wet spot on the marble, a spot she'd just mopped on the landing and hadn't had time to dry completely. Her worn Walmart sneaker, the rubber sole nearly smooth from years of wear, slipped on the slick stone. The world tilted violently. Shanice's arms windmilled desperately as she tried to catch herself, tried to grab the glass railing, but the bucket of supplies went flying from her hands. She tumbled down 8 marble stairs, her body slamming against the hard stone and unforgiving steel railing again and again, pain exploding through her ribs and head with each impact. She landed in a crumpled heap at the bottom of the staircase, unable to breathe, her lungs refusing to work. Blood ran down her face from a gash on her forehead, warm and sticky, dripping onto the white marble and staining it red. Her ribs screamed with a pain so intense it made her vision blur and swim. She tried to push herself up, tried to stand, and collapsed back down, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Mrs. Park's face appeared above her, pale with shock, her eyes wide with fear. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. The older woman pulled out her phone, hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. I'm calling an ambulance right now. Don't try to move. No, Shanice managed to gasp out each word agony. I can't afford. Mr. Kim's insurance will cover it. You were hurt on his property. Don't argue. Don't move. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. They loaded Shanice onto a stretcher with practiced efficiency, asking questions about pain levels and consciousness that she could barely answer through the haze of agony. Mrs. Park rode with her in the ambulance, gripping her hand and murmuring reassurances in a mixture of English and Korean. St. Catherine Hospital, one of the paramedics said into his radio as the ambulance screamed through Beverly Hills. Female, late 20s, head trauma and possible broken ribs from a fall. Patient is conscious, but in severe pain. ETA, 8 minutes. St. Catherine Hospital. Even through her pain, Shanice recognized the name. The luxury hospital downtown where rich people and celebrities went. The hospital with the marble lobby and the famous doctors. At least they'd treat her properly there. At least she'd get good care. She had no idea that St. Catherine Hospital was owned by the same man whose stairs she'd just fallen down. She had no idea that in less than 2 hours, Kim Jae-sung would walk through those doors for a routine administrative meeting and find her bleeding on the floor. She had no idea that the nurses who were about to ignore her, who were about to leave her suffering in that hallway, were about to make the biggest and last mistake of their careers. All Shanice knew was pain and fear and the desperate hope that this accident wouldn't cost her the job that was supposed to save her and Lily from being thrown out onto the street. The ambulance bay doors at St. Catherine Hospital slid open with a hydraulic hiss. 2 paramedics wheeled Shanice through on a gurney, her blood-soaked uniform sticking to her skin, her vision swimming in and out of focus. The pain in her ribs was a living thing, sharp and vicious with every breath. Through the haze, she registered gleaming floors, recessed lighting, the antiseptic smell mixed with something floral and expensive. Trauma patient, fall from height, possible concussion and broken ribs, one paramedic called out to the nurses' station as they wheeled her into the emergency department. 3 nurses looked up from their computers. Their eyes swept over Shanice, her dark skin, her cheap maid's uniform, her worn shoes, and something shifted in their expressions. The lead nurse, a blonde woman in her 40s with sharp features and cold blue eyes, exchanged a glance with her colleagues. Her name tag read, Jennifer Walters, RN. "Put her in Bay 7, Jennifer said dismissively, barely looking up from her computer screen. "We'll get to her when we can." "She needs immediate attention," the paramedic insisted. "Possible head trauma." "We're very busy this morning," Jennifer interrupted, her voice dripping with barely concealed irritation. "Bay 7. We'll assess her in order of priority." The paramedics wheeled Shanice into Bay 7, a curtained area at the far end of the emergency department. They transferred her carefully to the hospital bed, and one of them, a young Latino man with kind eyes, squeezed her hand. "You're going to be okay, they'll take good care of you here." But the hours crawled by, and nobody came. Shanice lay on the thin mattress, blood drying on her face, her ribs screaming with every shallow breath. Through the gap in the curtain, she could see nurses walking past, laughing and chatting, stopping to check on other patients. White patients, wealthy patients in designer hospital gowns with worried family members clustered around them. Nobody looked at her. It was as if she were invisible. At the nurses' station, Jennifer sipped her coffee and scrolled through her phone. Her colleague, a red-haired nurse named Amanda, leaned over. "What about the woman in 7? She's been here almost 2 hours." Jennifer didn't even glance up. "She can wait. Did you see her uniform? She's just a maid. Probably doesn't even have real insurance. Let her sit there and think about whether she actually needs emergency care or if she's wasting our time." She was bleeding pretty badly. "Then she'll bleed a little more. We have actual patients to attend to." Jennifer's voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried. "We don't serve people like her here. This is St. Catherine, not County General. If she wants charity care, she should go where she belongs." Amanda hesitated, then turned back to her computer without another word. Behind them, another nurse snickered. In Bay 7, Shanice heard every word. Tears burned behind her eyes, mixing with the dried blood on her face. But she refused to let them fall. She'd lived 29 years as a black woman in America. This wasn't the first time someone had looked at her and decided she didn't matter. It wouldn't be the last. But that didn't make it hurt any less. That didn't make the humiliation any easier to swallow. She thought about Lily, about her daughter waiting at Mrs. Chen's, expecting her mother to come home, about the rent money she couldn't afford to lose, about how even when you worked yourself to exhaustion, even when you tried to do everything right, the world still found ways to remind you of your place. 2.5 hours after her arrival, Jennifer finally appeared at the curtain of Bay 7. She didn't come inside. She stood at the opening, clipboard in hand. her expression one of profound annoyance. "Are you still here?" Shanice tried to sit up and gasped, pain shooting through her torso like lightning. I need help. I can't breathe properly. My head—" "I'm sure it's fine," Jennifer interrupted, examining her manicured nails. "You probably just bruised yourself. Take some ibuprofen when you get home. We need this bay for actual emergencies." "Please," Shanice whispered, hating how her voice broke. "Something's wrong, I know something's wrong." Jennifer's lip curled in disgust. "Listen, sweetie, we all know what this is. You fell at some rich person's house, and now you're trying to milk it for a payout. Well, it's not going to work here, so why don't you get up, walk yourself out, and stop wasting everyone's time before you dirty the place even more." The words hit Shanice like physical blows. She stared at this woman, this nurse who had taken an oath to help people, and saw nothing but contempt in her eyes. That's when she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Not the soft-soled shoes of medical staff, but the sharp, measured click of expensive leather against polished floors. The sound was different from everything else in the hospital. Purposeful, powerful, slightly dangerous. The entire emergency department seemed to go quiet. Kim Jae-sung walked through the automatic doors of St. Catherine Hospital at 11:45 a.m., his assistant Min-jun trailing 2 steps behind. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that fit his broad-shouldered frame perfectly, his dark hair styled back from a face that could have been carved from stone. At 37 years old, he was tall, 6 feet 2 inches, with the kind of presence that made people instinctively move out of his way. A thin scar ran along his left jawline, the only imperfection in otherwise sharp, handsome features. His dark eyes missed nothing. He owned St. Catherine Hospital, along with 4 others in California, though few people knew it. The ownership was buried under layers of corporations and shell companies. Officially, he was here for a quarterly administrative meeting with the chief medical officer. Unofficially, he was here to assess whether certain staff members were skimming money from supply budgets. He had evidence. He always had evidence before he moved. The emergency department was on his way to the administrative offices. He cut through it because it was faster, his eyes automatically cataloguing everything he saw with the attention to detail that had kept him alive and in power for 15 years. Clean floors, modern equipment, nurses chatting at their station, normal for a Tuesday morning. Then he saw her. A black woman collapsed against the wall just outside one of the examination bays, trying to hold herself upright, but clearly failing. Her maid's uniform was torn and blood-stained. Blood dripped from a gash on her forehead, and the way she held her ribs told him they were broken. Her face was twisted in pain, but what struck him wasn't the physical damage. It was the look in her eyes, humiliation mixed with resignation, the expression of someone used to being invisible. He recognized her instantly. The new housekeeper Mrs. Park had hired. The woman who'd been cleaning his home yesterday, who'd worked with such careful precision, whose daughter's picture he'd seen in the kitchen when he'd gone down for coffee. The woman who'd fallen down his stairs just hours ago. 3 nurses stood 10 feet away, pointedly not looking at her. The air in Kim Jae-sung's lungs turned to ice. His expression didn't change. He'd learned long ago to keep his face neutral even when rage burned through his veins. But beside him, Min-jun took an instinctive step back. He knew that stillness. That was the stillness before violence. Jae-sung walked past the nurse's station without a word. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor like a countdown. He stopped in front of Shanice, and her eyes, glazed with pain, slowly focused on his face. Recognition flickered there, followed by confusion. "Mr. Kim," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to fall. I didn't mean to—" "Be quiet," he said softly. Not harshly, but with absolute authority. Then he turned, and his voice cut through the emergency department like a blade. "Someone explain to me why this woman has been bleeding on my floor for—" He checked his watch. "Iapathic Philippe, that cost more than most people's cars. 2 hours and 37 minutes without treatment." The nurses at the station froze. Jennifer's face went white, then red. "Mr. Kim, we didn't know you were— We were following standard triage protocols." "Standard triage protocols," Jae-sung repeated. his voice deadly quiet. He walked toward the nurse's station with measured steps. For a woman with obvious head trauma and broken ribs, a woman who fell in my home on my property while working for me, and you left her bleeding in a hallway like garbage. We were going to... I heard what you said. His voice dropped even lower, and somehow that made it more terrifying. I heard every word. The security cameras in this hospital record audio. Did you know that? Jennifer's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Behind her, Amanda had gone pale as paper. I want her in an examination room immediately, Jae-sung continued. I want Dr. Harrison, your best trauma specialist, examining her within 5 minutes. I want a full CT scan, X-rays, whatever is needed. And then... He turned his attention fully to Jennifer, and she actually took a step backward. I want you to go to Human Resources, collect your belongings and leave my hospital. You're fired. You can't... I own this hospital. Each word was precisely enunciated. I can do whatever I want. You have 5 seconds to start moving toward HR before I have security escort you out. Jennifer's face crumpled, shock and fury warring in her expression. This is discrimination. I'll sue. You're firing me because of some maid who's probably faking... The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Jae-sung took 1 step toward Jennifer, just 1, and she stumbled backward. You have 3 seconds. 2, 1. She fled. Amanda and the third nurse stood frozen, not daring to move. You, Jae-sung said to Amanda. Get Dr. Harrison now. You. And to the third nurse. Prepare examination room 1. Move. They scattered like frightened birds. Within minutes, Shanice was surrounded by medical personnel, gentle hands supporting her, a doctor with graying hair and worried eyes examining her carefully. Someone cleaned the blood from her face. Someone else started an IV. A nurse brought warm blankets. Through it all, Jae-sung stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching everything with dark, unreadable eyes, making sure they treated her properly this time, making sure they remembered that in his world, you didn't leave people bleeding on floors. You didn't decide someone's worth based on the color of their skin or the cheapness of their clothes. Dr. Harrison approached him after 15 minutes. 3 broken ribs, moderate concussion, deep laceration on the forehead that will need stitches. She's lucky, nothing life-threatening. But she should never have been left untreated this long. She could have had internal bleeding. This is completely unacceptable. I know, Jae-sung said quietly. It's being handled. He looked past the doctor at Shanice, who was lying on the examination table now, properly cared for at last. Her eyes found his across the room. They were full of confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been gratitude, but also suspicion. She was smart enough to wonder why a powerful man would care about a maid who'd fallen in his house. She had no idea that he'd spent 15 years watching powerful people crush those beneath them. And somewhere along the way, he'd decided that while he might be a criminal, he didn't have to be that kind of monster. She had no idea that his own mother had been a cleaning woman who died in a hospital that wouldn't treat her because she didn't have insurance. She had no idea that when he looked at her, he saw dignity in the face of humiliation, and that was something he recognized, something he respected. Min-jun appeared at his elbow. The CMO is waiting for you, Hyung. The meeting about the supply budget, cancel it, Jae-sung said. I'm staying until I know she's stable. And then you're going to get me the personnel files of every nurse who was on duty this morning. I want to know if this is a pattern. If it is, we're cleaning house. Understood. Jae-sung pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Park. The new housekeeper fell in the house this morning. She's at St. Catherine with broken ribs. Find out about her family situation. If she has children, make sure they're taken care of. Pay is continued during recovery. Full medical coverage. The response came immediately. Already done. She has a 6-year-old daughter. Mrs. Chen next door is watching her. I'll handle it. He typed back. Good. He looked at Shanice again. She'd been given pain medication now and her eyes were starting to close, the exhaustion and trauma finally catching up with her. But before she drifted off, she looked at him one more time, and he saw the question there. Why? He didn't have a good answer, not one he could explain. So he simply stood there, silent and watchful. until he was certain she would be okay. Until he was certain that in his hospital, in his world, she would be treated the way every human being deserved to be treated, with dignity, with care, with respect. And anyone who couldn't understand that would no longer work for him. Shanice woke in a private hospital room, so luxurious it looked like a hotel suite. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Los Angeles. The bed was softer than anything she'd ever slept on, with Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. An IV drip fed steadily into her arm. Her ribs were wrapped tightly, the pain reduced to a dull, manageable ache thanks to whatever medication they'd given her. For a moment she didn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten here. Then it all came rushing back. The fall, the blood, the nurses who'd left her suffering, and Kim Jae-sung appearing like some avenging angel in an expensive suit. The way he'd spoken, quiet and deadly, the way the entire hospital had jumped to obey him. The door opened softly. Mrs. Park entered carrying a small overnight bag, her face creased with worry. "Oh, thank God. You're awake. How do you feel?" "Like I fell down a marble staircase," Shanice said, her voice hoarse. She tried to sit up and winced. "Lily, where's Lily? I need to—" "Your daughter is fine," Mrs. Park interrupted gently, moving to adjust the pillows behind Shanice's back. "Mrs. Chen is watching her. I spoke with her myself, paid her for the week, and told her you'd been in an accident, but you're okay. Lily knows you're in the hospital, but that you'll be home soon. She made you a drawing." Mrs. Park pulled a piece of paper from the bag, a crayon drawing of two stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "Mommy and me," written in careful 6-year-old letters at the top. Tears burned Shanice's eyes. She took the drawing with trembling fingers. "I need to call her." "Of course." Mrs. Park handed her a phone. Not Shanice's old cracked Android, but a new iPhone. "Mr. Kim had this brought for you. Your old phone was damaged in the fall. Mrs. Chen's number is already programmed in." Shanice stared at the phone, then at Mrs. Park. "Why is he doing this? I don't understand. I'm just the maid who fell in his house. He doesn't owe me—" "Mr. Kim takes his responsibilities seriously," Mrs. Park said carefully. "You were injured on his property under his employment. He considers that his responsibility to address—" That wasn't the whole truth. Shanice could see it in the older woman's eyes. But before she could press further, Mrs. Park continued, "The doctors say you need to stay here for 2 more days for observation. 3 broken ribs, a concussion, 12 stitches in your forehead. You're very lucky it wasn't worse. I can't afford— Everything is covered. Medical expenses, medications, everything. Mr. Kim has made that very clear." Mrs. Park's voice softened. "Shanice, I need you to understand something. What those nurses did to you this morning was unforgivable. It was cruel, and it was racist, and it should never have happened. Mr. Kim was." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He was angrier than I've seen him in years. 3 nurses were fired. The chief medical officer is under investigation. He's having the entire emergency department staff retrained on anti-discrimination protocols." Shanice's breath caught. "He fired them. Because of me. He fired them because they violated every principle of medical care and human decency," Mrs. Park corrected firmly. "You could have died while they stood there gossiping. They deserved what they got." Over the next 2 days, Shanice remained in the hospital, healing slowly. Lily visited every evening, Mrs. Chen bringing her straight from school. The little girl would climb carefully onto the bed, mindful of her mother's injuries, and chatter about her day, while Shanice held her tight and breathed in her daughter's scent. Each visit, someone from the hospital brought toys for Lily, coloring books, stuffed animals, puzzle sets. Each night, someone delivered dinner for both of them from expensive restaurants, food Shanice had never tasted before. She never saw Kim Jae-sung, but his presence was everywhere, in the private room, in the attentive nursing staff, in the stack of bills marked "paid in full" that arrived daily. In the envelope, Mrs. Park brought on the 3rd day containing 2 weeks of salary, plus the promised bonus, even though Shanice had only worked a day and a half. "This is too much," Shanice protested, staring at the cash. "I can't accept—" "You can and you will," Mrs. Park said firmly. Your rent is paid through the end of the year. Mr. Kim took care of it, and there's a spot at Little Scholars Academy waiting for Lily, the private daycare near Mr. Kim's house. Tuition paid for the next 6 months. Shanice's hands shook. Why? Please, Mrs. Park. I need to understand why he's doing all this. The older woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat on the edge of the hospital bed and took Shanice's hand. When Mr. Kim was 15 years old, his mother collapsed at the restaurant where she worked as a dishwasher. They brought her to a hospital very much like this one. She had a brain aneurysm. She was bleeding internally, and the hospital staff made her wait for 7 hours because she was an immigrant with no insurance. By the time they treated her, it was too late. Mrs. Park's eyes were bright with unshed tears. He was just a boy. He couldn't save her. He couldn't make them help her. All his life. He's remembered what it feels like to be powerless while someone you care about suffers because they're considered worthless. Understanding crashed over Shanice like a wave. I remind him of his mother. Perhaps. Or perhaps he simply refuses to let happen to someone else what happened to her. Either way, you were under his protection, in his employ, and they hurt you. He's making it right the only way he knows how. On her release day, Shanice expected Mrs. Park to pick her up. Instead, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the hospital entrance, and Min Jun stepped out, opening the rear door. Kim Jae-sung sat in the back seat, looking at his phone, his expression unreadable. Shanice froze on the sidewalk, suddenly conscious of her borrowed hospital clothes and the bandage still on her forehead. Min Jun gestured politely. "Ms. Williams, please." She slid into the car, her heart hammering. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Jae-sung looked up from his phone, his dark eyes sweeping over her face, cataloguing her injuries with clinical precision. "You look better," he said. "The swelling has gone down." "Thank you," Shanice said quietly, "for everything, for saving me that day, for the hospital room, for the money, for Lily's daycare." "You're welcome." His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "Mrs. Park tells me you're concerned about employment, that you think you can't return to work at my house because of the accident." Shanice's stomach clenched. "I understand if you don't want me back. I was clumsy. I cost you money and trouble. You slipped on wet marble while doing the job I hired you to do," Jae-sung interrupted calmly. "The fault was the wet floor, not your competence. Mrs. Park says your work was excellent. When you're medically cleared, the job is yours if you want it." Relief flooded through her. Yes, I want it, thank you." He nodded once, then turned his attention back to his phone. They drove in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "I have a proposition for you, one you're free to refuse without consequence." Shanice tensed. Here it was, the catch, the real reason behind his generosity. "What kind of proposition?" "I own 6 hospitals in California." St. Catherine is not the only facility where staff discrimination has been documented. I've seen the reports, the complaints, the patterns of patients from certain demographics receiving substandard care. But reports and complaints don't tell me what it actually looks like on the ground. They don't tell me how the system fails. He set down his phone and looked at her directly. "You experienced that failure firsthand. I want to hire you as a consultant to visit my hospital facilities, observe operations, and report back on where the system is breaking down, particularly regarding treatment of minority and low-income patients." Shanice stared at him. "You want me to spy on your hospitals? I want you to assess them with the perspective of someone who knows what it's like to be invisible to the system, someone who can identify the gaps between policy and practice." His expression didn't change, but something in his voice intensified. "You would be well compensated. $60,000 per year plus full benefits, better than you're making now cleaning houses." $60,000. Shanice's mind reeled. That was more than double what she'd earned last year working 3 jobs. That was stability. That was being able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment so Lily could have her own room. That was never having to choose between groceries and electricity again. "Why me?" she asked. "You could hire someone with a medical background. Someone with credentials. Someone with credentials wouldn't see what you see. They'd blend in with the staff. You're an outsider. You know what it's like to be on the other side of the system. That's what I need. Shanice studied his face, trying to understand his angle. In her experience, powerful men didn't offer opportunities like this without wanting something in return. What do you really want from me? A flicker of something, approval maybe, crossed his features. I want you to help me fix a broken system, and I want you to accept help without assuming there's a predatory motive behind it. Not all powerful men are predators, Ms. Williams. Some of us just want to use our power to do something useful. The car pulled up outside her apartment building. Min-jun opened her door. Jae-sung handed her a business card. Think about it. Call me when you decide. Shanice took the card, her fingers brushing his for a brief second. Mr. Kim, thank you for everything. You didn't have to do any of this. Yes, he said quietly. I did. Over the next 2 weeks, Shanice healed. She rested, spent time with Lily, and thought about Kim Jae-sung's offer. She called references, researched his business holdings, tried to find the catch. There wasn't one. At least, none that she could find. She accepted the job. Her first assignment was St. Catherine itself. She walked through the emergency department wearing plain clothes, a hidden microphone, and a small camera disguised as a button. What she observed over 3 weeks made her blood boil. The discrimination she'd experienced wasn't an isolated incident. It was systematic. Patients of color waited longer. Their pain was dismissed more readily. Their concerns were taken less seriously. She documented everything in meticulous reports that she delivered to Jae-sung weekly. He read each one without expression, but she saw his jaw tighten, saw his fingers grip the pages hard enough to wrinkle them. After the 3rd report, he called a meeting with the hospital's entire administrative staff. She wasn't invited, but Mrs. Park told her later that he'd eviscerated them, promised that anyone caught discriminating would be terminated immediately and blacklisted from medical work in California. That's when Dr. Rebecca Harrington learned about Shanice's new role. Rebecca was St. Catherine's chief medical officer, a woman in her early 40s with blonde hair always pulled into a severe bun, cold grey eyes, and a reputation for running the hospital with ruthless efficiency. She'd worked there for 15 years, climbing through the ranks, building alliances, consolidating power. The hospital was her kingdom, the staff her subjects, and now some black maid with no medical training was threatening everything she'd built. Rebecca sat in her corner office, staring at the confidential memo that had been mistakenly CC'd to her. Shanice Williams, consultant, patient equity assessment, confidential. She'd made discreet inquiries, found out about Shanice's hiring, her salary, her direct reporting line to Kim Jae-sung himself. Rage burned in Rebecca's chest. This woman, this nobody, had somehow seduced or manipulated one of the most powerful men in California. She'd played the victim, probably exaggerated the discrimination she'd experienced, and now she was positioned to destroy careers, including Rebecca's. Because Rebecca knew what a thorough investigation would uncover. The shortcuts she'd taken, the budget cuts that disproportionately affected equipment in wards serving low-income patients, the complaints she'd buried, the patterns she'd ignored because they were profitable. St. Catherine catered to wealthy patients who paid premium rates for premium care. Caring for poor patients lost money. Rebecca had made sure the hospital prioritized accordingly. It was just good business. But if Kim Jae-sung saw it through Shanice Williams's eyes, he'd see discrimination, racism, violations of medical ethics, and Rebecca would be the one held responsible. She couldn't allow that. She'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let some opportunistic maid destroy her career. Rebecca picked up her phone and made a call to a contact at the Los Angeles Times. I have a story for you about corruption and extortion at St. Catherine Hospital, about a woman who fabricated discrimination claims to blackmail a wealthy investor into giving her money and a fake job. 3 days later, the article hit, Black woman accused of extortion in hospital discrimination. Hoax, screamed the headline. The article painted Shanice as a con artist who'd staged her injuries, manipulated a wealthy businessman, and was now making false accusations to maintain her profitable position. It included anonymous sources from the hospital claiming Shanice was never mistreated, that she'd been treated according to standard protocols, that she was a liar and a fraud. The article included Shanice's full name, her address, a photo of her and Lily outside their apartment. The media descended like locusts. Reporters camped outside her building. They followed her to Lily's school. They shouted questions about extortion and blackmail. They called her a scammer, a liar, a woman using her race to manipulate a rich man. Lily came home from school crying because kids were asking if her mommy was a criminal. Shanice stopped leaving the apartment. She sent Lily to stay with Mrs. Chen. She sat in her living room with the curtains drawn, watching her life implode, and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Her phone rang. Mrs. Park. "Don't answer the door. Don't talk to anyone. Mr. Kim is handling it." "How?" Shanice asked, her voice breaking. "How do you handle this? They're saying I'm a liar. They're saying I made it all up. My daughter is being harassed. How does he fix this?" "You'll see," Mrs. Park said quietly. "Just trust him. One more day. Can you hold on one more day?" Shanice didn't answer. She just hung up and cried. The next morning, Kim Jae-sung called a press conference at St. Catherine Hospital. Shanice watched it on her phone, huddled on her couch. Jae-sung stood at a podium in an immaculate black suit, his expression carved from ice. Behind him was a screen displaying security footage, time-stamped, dated, undeniable. "3 weeks ago," he said, his voice carrying through the hospital's conference room packed with reporters, "Shanice Williams arrived at this hospital with serious injuries sustained in an accident at my home. What happened next is documented in the footage you're about to see." The screen came to life. There was Shanice bleeding and in pain, being left in the hallway. There were the nurses walking past her. There was Jennifer Walters saying, clear as day, "We don't serve people like her here." The room erupted. Jae-sung waited for silence, then continued. "Ms. Williams didn't fabricate anything. She was the victim of medical negligence motivated by racism. I hired her as a consultant because she had experienced firsthand the failures in our system. And that's when Dr. Rebecca Harrington decided to destroy her reputation to cover her own misconduct." Another image appeared on the screen. Financial records. Dr. Harrington has been embezzling hospital funds for 3 years. $200,000 redirected from patient care budgets into personal accounts. Additionally, my investigation has uncovered 47 documented cases of discriminatory treatment under her watch, all of which she deliberately ignored or suppressed. Rebecca sat in her office watching the press conference on her computer, her face drained of all color. No, this wasn't possible. How had he... There was a knock at her door. She looked up to see police officers standing in her doorway, badges out. "Dr. Rebecca Harrington, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit defamation." The handcuffs clicked around her wrists like the closing of a tomb. At the press conference, Jae-sung wasn't finished. "Let me be very clear. Shanice Williams is a person of integrity and courage who has been systematically attacked for daring to speak truth about a broken system. Anyone who continues to harass her or her daughter will answer to me personally. And I promise you, you don't want that." The way he said it made every reporter in the room go silent. Shanice watched through tears, but this time they were different tears. Relief, vindication, the crushing weight of public humiliation lifting from her shoulders. Her phone rang. It was him. "It's done," Jae-sung said quietly. "Rebecca is in police custody. The false article will be retracted. You and Lily are safe." How did you do all that so fast?" "I knew she would come after you the moment I promoted you. So I had her investigated. I've been building the case for weeks." A pause. "I told you that you were under my protection. I meant it. No one touches what's mine." "What's mine?" The words sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. You have a job to finish, 6 hospitals to assess, a system to fix. Are you still willing to do that?" Shanice thought about Jennifer Walters' cruel words, about Rebecca's attempt to destroy her, about every time in her life someone had looked at her and decided she didn't matter, and she thought about the power she now had to make sure it didn't happen to someone else. "Yes," she said firmly, "I'm willing." Good, take a few days with your daughter, then get back to work. But before she could return to work, everything changed again. Because while Kim Jae-sung had destroyed Rebecca Harrington, he'd also drawn the attention of people far more dangerous than a corrupt hospital administrator. People who saw an opportunity in Shanice Williams, an opportunity to hurt the man who'd been untouchable for far too long. The Salazar family had been watching, and they were about to make their move. 3 days after Rebecca's arrest, Shanice was walking Lily home from Little Scholars Academy when the black van pulled up beside them. It happened so fast, she barely had time to scream. 2 men jumped out, their faces covered with ski masks. One grabbed Lily, the other grabbed Shanice. A cloth pressed over her mouth, something chemical, sweet and burning, and the world went dark. She woke with her head pounding, her hands zip-tied behind her back, sitting on a concrete floor. The room was dark except for a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. It smelled like oil and rust and fear. Across from her, Lily sat with her back against the wall, her little face streaked with tears but her mouth covered with duct tape. When she saw Shanice's eyes open, she made a muffled sound of relief. "Lily," Shanice gasped, struggling against her restraints. "Baby, are you hurt?" A man stepped into the light. He was Latino, maybe 40 years old, with a shaved head and a teardrop tattoo under his left eye. He smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Shanice had ever seen. "She's fine. For now. Whether she stays that way depends on your boyfriend." "I don't have a boyfriend," Shanice said, her voice shaking. "I don't know what you want, but you have the wrong people." "Kim Jae-sung," the man interrupted. "The Korean who thinks he owns Los Angeles. We know you work for him, we know he protects you, which means you're valuable." He crouched down in front of her, his breath hot on her face. "My name is Marco Salazar. The Kim family has been expanding into our territory for 2 years, taking our shipping contracts, undercutting our prices, making us look weak. So now we're going to make your boyfriend choose. Give us back our territory or watch you and your little girl die slowly." Terror turned Shanice's blood to ice. "He's not my boyfriend. He's just my employer. He won't." "He fired 3 nurses because they were rude to you. He destroyed a hospital administrator who threatened you. He paid your rent and enrolled your daughter in a $15,000 a year daycare." Marco's smile widened. "Oh, he'll pay. Men like Kim Jae-sung have one weakness: they can't stand to lose what's theirs. And he's made it very clear to everyone that you're his." He stood and walked toward Lily. Shanice's heart stopped. "Don't touch her, please. She's 6 years old. Please don't hurt her." "Then you better hope Kim values you as much as we think he does." Marco pulled out his phone and took a photo of Shanice and Lily, both bound and terrified. "Smile for the camera." At his mansion in Beverly Hills, Kim Jae-sung was in a meeting with Min-jun and his financial advisors when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Then again. On the 4th buzz, something cold settled in his gut. He picked up the phone. The photo loaded. His entire world stopped. Shanice, zip-tied and bleeding from a cut on her lip, her eyes wide with terror. And beside her, little Lily, that bright 6-year-old who charmed Mrs. Park by helping her bake cookies last week, gagged and crying. The message came through. "Your territory for their lives. You have 24 hours to decide. 213-555-0147. Min-jun saw his face change and immediately dismissed the advisors. "Hyung, what is it?" Jae-sung handed him the phone without a word. Min-jun looked at the photo and went pale. "Salazar?" "Has to be." Jae-sung's voice was perfectly calm, but his hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles were white. "They took them from the daycare 4 hours ago, judging by the light in the photo, which means they have a 4-hour head start. We should call the police." "Oh, no." The word was absolute. "By the time police mobilize, Shanice and Lily will be dead. We handle this ourselves." "Hyung, they have a child. We need to be careful." "I know exactly what they have." Jae-sung stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. He felt a rage so pure, so focused, that it almost frightened him. Almost. "Gather everyone, pull every resource we have. Traffic cameras, informants, surveillance footage from the daycare. Find out where the Salazar family operates. Find their warehouses, their safe houses, every property they own. That could take days. You have 6 hours. Jae-sung turned, and Min-jun actually stepped back from what he saw in his cousin's eyes. Because if I don't have a location in 6 hours, I'm going to start burning down every Salazar property in Los Angeles until someone tells me where they are. Do you understand? Min-jun nodded and pulled out his phone, already making calls. Jae-sung stood alone in his office and allowed himself one moment of fear. One moment to imagine Shanice's terror, Lily's confusion and panic. One moment to feel the crushing weight of responsibility. He had painted a target on their backs by protecting them, by making them visible in his world. Then he pushed the fear down into the cold, dark place where he kept all his emotions and let the calculating predator take over. The part of him that had survived in the criminal underworld for 20 years, the part that knew how to be ruthless. The Salazars had made a fatal mistake. They'd taken something that belonged to him, and he always got back what was his. In the warehouse, Shanice worked frantically on her restraints. The zip ties were tight, cutting into her wrists, but she'd learned something over years of cleaning houses. Plastic was strong, but not unbreakable. She rubbed her wrists against the rough concrete wall, slowly, carefully, whenever Marco wasn't looking. The plastic dug into her skin, drawing blood, but she didn't stop. Lily watched her with wide eyes, smart enough to stay silent, to not draw attention. God, her daughter was so brave. 6 years old and she wasn't screaming or crying anymore. She was watching, waiting, trusting that Mommy would fix this. Shanice had to fix this. She couldn't wait for Kim Jae-sung to save them. She had to save herself, save Lily, because that's what mothers did. She'd been studying the warehouse during the hours of captivity. It was old, abandoned, probably used for storage at some point. There were 2 doors, the main entrance where Marco and his men came and went, and a smaller service door in the back corner. 3 guards total, rotating shifts. They were confident, relaxed. They didn't see her as a threat, just a helpless maid with a child. That was their second mistake. Shanice might have spent her life cleaning houses, but she'd grown up in South LA. She'd learned early how to survive, how to fight, how to protect what was hers. And these men had taken her daughter. She kept working on the zip ties. At Kim Jae-sung's mansion, Min-jun burst into the office. We found them. Warehouse in Vernon, Industrial District, registered to a shell company that traces back to Salazar operations. Traffic cameras caught a black van matching the description heading that direction 4 hours ago. How many men? Best guess, 3 to 5. Salazar himself might be there. Get the team. Full tactical gear, no police. Jae-sung checked his gun, loaded a fresh magazine. We go in quiet, extract Shanice and Lily first, then handle the Salazars. And if they use the hostages as shields? Jae-sung's expression was carved from ice. Then I'll shoot through the Salazars to get to them. I don't miss. They moved through the city in 3 black SUVs. No lights, no sirens. Jae-sung rode in the lead vehicle, his mind running through scenarios, contingencies, angles of attack. Min-jun sat beside him, checking weapons with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this many times before. You care about her, Min-jun said quietly. It wasn't a question. She's under my protection. It's more than that, young. You've never moved this fast, risked this much for anyone. Jae-sung didn't answer, because Min-jun was right, and he wasn't ready to examine what that meant. All he knew was that the thought of Shanice and Lily hurt, scared, waiting for rescue. It made something in his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt since his mother died. Inside the warehouse, Shanice felt the zip tie finally give way. Her wrists were bloody and raw, but her hands were free. She kept them behind her back, not letting the guards see. Across the room, Marco was on his phone, arguing with someone in Spanish. The other 2 guards were playing cards, bored. Shanice caught Lily's eye and mouthed, "When I move, you run to the back door." Lily nodded. Her small face set with determination that broke Shanice's heart. Marco ended his call and turned toward them. "Your boyfriend isn't answering. Maybe he doesn't care as much as we—" Shanice moved. She lunged forward, grabbed a heavy wrench that one of the guards had left on the floor, and swung it with every ounce of strength and desperation in her body. It connected with Marco's temple with a sickening crack. He went down hard. "Lily, run!" Lily ripped the duct tape from her mouth and ran toward the back door. The two guards jumped up, reaching for their guns. Shanice threw herself at the nearest one, the wrench swinging wildly. She wasn't trained, wasn't strong, but she was a mother protecting her child, and that made her feral. The guard grabbed her arm, twisted. Pain exploded through her shoulder. He backhanded her across the face and she fell, tasting blood. Through blurred vision she saw Lily at the back door, struggling with the lock. The second guard was advancing toward her daughter. "No!" Shanice screamed and launched herself at his legs, bringing him down. That's when the front door exploded inward. Kim Jae-sung came through like a force of nature, gun raised, his team behind him. He took in the scene in a split second, Marco unconscious on the floor, Shanice fighting a guard twice her size, Lily trapped at the back door with another guard approaching. He shot the guard advancing on Lily. One shot, center mass, the man dropped. He swung the gun toward the guard fighting Shanice and put a bullet in his shoulder. The man screamed and released her. "Mummy!" Lily ran to Shanice, who caught her and held her tight, both of them shaking. Min-jun and the team swept the warehouse, securing it, checking for additional threats. Marco groaned, trying to sit up, blood streaming from his head wound. Jae-sung walked over and pressed his gun to Marco's forehead. "You touched what's mine," he said quietly. "You threatened a 6-year-old child. Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now." "Please," Marco gasped. "Please. I was following orders. We just wanted to pressure you. You failed." Jae-sung's finger tightened on the trigger. "Wait." Shanice's voice cut through the warehouse. She stood on shaking legs, Lily clinging to her. "Not in front of my daughter, please." Jae-sung looked at her, this woman who'd just fought off 2 armed men with nothing but a wrench and maternal fury, whose face was bruised and bleeding, who stood there protecting her child even now. Something in his chest cracked open. He lowered the gun. "Get them out of here," he told Min-jun. Then he looked back at Marco. "You're going to call every member of the Salazar family. You're going to tell them that their territory is mine now, that if they ever come near Shanice Williams or her daughter again, I will eliminate every single one of them. Do you understand?" Marco nodded frantically. Outside the warehouse, Shanice stood in the cool night air with Lily in her arms, both of them wrapped in blankets someone had brought. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called them. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jae-sung emerged from the warehouse, his suit spattered with blood that wasn't his. He walked straight to her and stopped, his dark eyes scanning her face, cataloging every injury. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "We're okay," Shanice whispered. "I'm okay." "Lily's okay." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face with surprising gentleness. His thumb traced the bruise on her cheek. "You fought them. Mrs. Park told me what the security footage from inside showed. You fought them off yourself. They took my daughter." Her voice broke. "What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to wait for me to save you," he said, and there was something raw in his voice. "That's why I moved heaven and earth to find you, because you and Lily are under my protection." "We're not your responsibility," Shanice said, even as tears streamed down her face. "We're not your family. You don't have to keep saving us." Jae-sung was quiet for a long moment. Then he knelt down so he was at eye level with Lily, who watched him with wide, tear-stained eyes. "Lily, do you know why I keep helping your mom?" The little girl shook her head. "Because she reminds me of my own mother. My mother was brave and strong, and she worked hard to take care of me, just like your mom does for you. And because when I look at you, I see someone worth protecting, someone who deserves to grow up safe and happy." He stood and looked at Shanice. "You're not just my responsibility, you're—" He paused, searching for words. "You're mine, both of you, and I protect what's mine." Shanice stared at him, this dangerous, powerful man who'd killed people tonight to save them, who was looking at her like she was something precious. "I don't understand what you want from me. I want you to let me keep you safe. I want you to accept that you matter to me." His jaw tightened. "I want you to stay close enough that I can make sure this never happens again." "For how long?" "For as long as you'll let me." The police arrived, and there were hours of questions, statements, medical examinations. But through it all, Jae-sung stayed close, a silent presence that made the police treat them with respect, made the hospital staff rush to care for them, made Lily feel safe enough to finally fall asleep in her mother's arms. 2 months later, Shanice Williams stood in the administrative offices of St. Catherine Hospital, wearing a tailored suit that fit her perfectly, her natural hair styled beautifully, her head held high. The board of directors had just voted unanimously to appoint her as Administrative Director of Patient Equity and Inclusion, a newly created position with real power to implement systemic changes across all Kim-owned hospital facilities. The protocol she designed became a national model. Every staff member underwent mandatory anti-discrimination training. Patient satisfaction surveys were redesigned to specifically track disparities in treatment. Complaint procedures were overhauled to ensure reports were investigated rather than buried. Within a year, St. Catherine went from one of the worst hospitals in California for treatment disparities to one of the best. Shanice and Lily moved into a 3-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Not a mansion. Shanice had insisted on something modest, but a real home with a yard where Lily could play. The rent was paid by Shanice's salary, which she'd earned. Kim Jae-sung visited often, sometimes for business, reviewing hospital reports, discussing expansion plans, sometimes just to have dinner with them, watching Lily chatter about her day at school while Shanice cooked. He taught Lily Korean words, brought her books, made her laugh with dry observations about the world. And slowly, carefully, he and Shanice built something neither of them had names for yet. Not employer and employee, not savior and rescued. Something more equal, more genuine. Something that started with respect and grew into trust and was blossoming into something that might become love, given time. 3 years later, Shanice stood in the hallways of St. Catherine Hospital, 7 months pregnant with their second child, watching as Dr. Chen, the new chief medical officer she'd helped select, gave a tour to visiting administrators from other hospitals who wanted to learn about their equity program. Every staff member who passed greeted her with genuine respect. "Good morning, Director Williams. How are you feeling, Miss Williams? Can I get you anything?" She thought about the woman who'd lain bleeding in this same hallway while nurses walked past her. She thought about her daughter, now 9 years old, who wanted to become a doctor so she could help people the way her mother had been helped. She thought about the man she'd married in a quiet ceremony, blending Korean and African-American traditions. The man feared by criminals and respected by hospitals, who'd knelt before her and promised to protect her and Lily for the rest of his life. Kim Jae-sung appeared at the end of the hallway, still dressed in an impeccable suit, still carrying himself with that contained power. But when he saw her, his expression softened in a way it did for no one else. He walked to her, placed a protective hand on her swollen belly, and kissed her forehead. "How was your morning?" he asked. "Productive. We're implementing the equity protocols at 3 more hospitals next month," she smiled. "How was yours?" "Boring meetings about shipping contracts. I'd rather be here with you." Lily appeared, running down the hallway in her school uniform. Little Scholars had an after-school program where she volunteered at the hospital. "Mum, Dad, I helped a nurse take blood pressure today. She showed me how." Shanice caught her daughter, and Jae-sung wrapped his arms around both of them. This man who'd been called ruthless, dangerous, a criminal. This man who'd destroyed anyone who threatened his family. This man who'd seen a woman bleeding on a hospital floor and decided her life mattered. They stood together in the hallway where it had all begun. This unlikely family forged from trauma and protection and respect that had grown into love. And Shanice thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, desperate, invisible, convinced she didn't matter. She mattered now. She'd made herself matter by using her pain to change a broken system, by refusing to be silent, by accepting help when it was offered with genuine respect. She was no longer invisible. She was Director Shanice Williams Kim, mother, wife, advocate, changemaker, and she was home.